Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Economy, Residents and Community Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Angela Davis, the chair of this committee. So we've got a very busy agenda today, and I'm going to stick as best as I can to a strict time limit of half an hour for each of our agenda items. So we're going to start agenda item 1, any apologies for this meeting?
Good morning. Yes, we have a couple of apologies. They've been received from Councillor Jake Berriman, Leader and Cabinet Member for People, Place and Partnerships, Committee Member Councillor Gary Mitchell and Officer Jenny Ashton, Senior Manager for Community Wellbeing. Thank
you very much, Gemma. Item 2, any disclosures of interest. So that's to receive disclosures of interest by members relating to items to be covered in today's meeting. So hands up, members, if you have any disclosures. So no hands up. Lovely. Thank you. Next is item 3, declaration of party whips. This is to receive disclosures of prohibited party whips, which a member has been given in relation to the meeting in accordance with section 78.3 of the local government measure. And again, any party whips, hands up. That should be a no, and it is, so that's excellent. Thank you very much. So moving on to the minutes of our previous meetings, we got 2 sets there. So the minutes from the 12th of June, we had the customer experience framework and 5 recommendations were made there. The car park review, and there were 11 recommendations, and we have the rights of way improvement paper, and that was for information, but the committee made a number of responses to those. So can I ask amongst the committee if anybody can put that forward and second it? I wasn't chairing that meeting myself. It was our vice chair, Councillor Gary, and I believe he has approved the minutes himself. So members, are you happy with those minutes? Yeah, thank you, Corinna. And so I've got somebody to second those. Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. And the minutes from the 20th of June, that was the public transport consultation on bus routes. And there were 2 recommendations, although there was a whole long list of comments you can see there in the minutes pack. So again, can I have somebody to approve those and a seconder, please? Okay, lovely. Pete, Councillor Pete, you've got your hand up. You wanted to say, you've got some comments. Sorry, Councillor Pete Lewington. You're on mute, Pete.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. No, I was just happy to propose them. Sorry, that was all.
Lovely. Thank you, Pete. And somebody to second those? I see another hand up. No? So, committee, are you saying you don't approve those minutes then? Liz, are you happy to second?
Yeah.
You're on. Sorry, Liz, you're on mute and Brian has just put his hand up.
Yeah, I lost my hand for a minute.
So you're happy to second, Brian?
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't there, Angela, sorry.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you, Liz. So thank you, everybody. Those are approved. So the first substantive item on our agenda today, Berriew Street car park. So we're going to talk about this through to 10:05. So we have with us today, we have the portfolio holder, Councillor Matthew Durrant, our Deputy Leader and the Cabinet Member for Fairer Powys. We have Councillor Jackie Charlton for a Greener Powys, and we have Andy Thompson, the Head of Housing. So shall I hand to you, Councillor Matthew, to introduce this paper?
Diolch, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As you know, the council has set itself the target of achieving 350 new council homes for social rent by 2031. And we've identified through our market analysis and our common housing register that Welshpool is an area where we have significantly high demand for social housing, but where land is in short supply for development for social housing. So working across directorates with Councillor Charlton and her service areas, we've identified this area within a car park asset that sits within HTR, Highways Transport and Recycling, as an area that could be offered up for future development of social housing. It is a grey belt or brown belt site, and it does enable us to achieve progress towards our targets in terms of social affordable housing for rent in Welshpool, and will help alleviate significant problems in terms of the pressure we have for demand on housing in that area. We are seeking to be able to acquire that site at a social value, which is covered and provided for within the corporate assets policy. And I do believe that we are able to do that as a local authority within our own policy and within the law on the advice that we've received to date. I'm happy to take questions from members, but the key thing for this chair is it is helping us realise our corporate objective that we've set out in Stronger, Fairer, Greener, our corporate strategic equality plan, which is to build more social houses for rent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matthew. So, committee, over to yourselves for any questions you have on this paper. Councillor Corinna.
Oh, hello. Thanks, Chair. My worries were that I don't understand about community asset transfer regulations. It sounds great if you can just hand this over to HRA for a very nominal amount, but there seems to become some constraint about that, some worry. And why, if the market value is 525,000, would the affordable value be 280,000? Who arrives at that figure? On what basis? Yes, those would be the first questions I'd like to ask, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Corinna. So, Matthew, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. There's some technical stuff that needs answering within that question. With your permission, I'll ask Andy, our head of service, to respond to the points around the value of the land.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Basically, when a land is sold for open market value, that assumes the houses are sold at full market price or rented at full market rent. And full market rent is effectively full market price plus profit each year thereafter. The homes that we provide are let at rents that are deemed social rents. So in Welshpool, they're less than half the market rent. To be able to do that, the cost of land is one of the major things influencing the cost of developing housing needs to be lower. And we also build to a higher standard than private developers, well, due to Welsh Government mandated requirements. So we undertake a viability assessment, which is a formal process which we apply to all housing developments and all housing acquisitions, that assesses what the full cost to us is of building or providing a home available for rent at a social rent and able to meet the mandated requirements of both Welsh Government and our own quality of accommodation standard, and see what the cost of that is. We then work back from that to come to a residual land value when it's calling new development, what we can pay for the land after we've paid for the cost of construction and allowed over 60 years, the cost of maintaining the properties, improving them, because over 60 years components do need replacing, as we all know, and managing the properties. We don't do any development if the payback period is longer than 60 years. If you go back to the interwar period, that was deemed the normal payback period for council housing. So once we do that, you then come up with the affordable land value. This is what the cost of the land would be to provide social housing. I've worked for a housing association, and this is what we would do if we were to buy land on the open market. We would say, to provide social housing, that is the most we can pay for it. And that is what we have done here, using the council's corporate asset policy and its viability assessment to come up with the valuation at an affordable housing value for this site to provide 100% social rented housing let on secure contracts.
Thank you. Could I please ask a further question about the trouble about community asset transfer, the cap? What's the constraint? What's the worry about giving council asset to the housing authority?
This is not a community asset transfer.
Sorry.
So both the Housing Revenue Council and the General Fund are both integral parts of the council.
Okay.
They are integral to the council you know, the HRA is not separate and distinct as an organisation. It is simply an accounting requirement mandated by the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 for councils to have a separate HRA. But this asset remains within the ownership and control of the council, albeit not in the general fund, but in the HRA. So it's really, if you like, an interdepartment transfer. It will generate a capital receipt as well from the HRA to the general fund. But, you know, it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it is effectively, yes, the general fund will get a capital receipt from the HRA because the HRA has to pay for a small, you know, has to pay for transfers. It can't receive land for free unless the council has a policy to do that. But it also means the council gets housing assets that it can also consider to be within its overall asset base. So it's not a community asset transfer. It's kind of like I don't know. It's a bit like, Volkswagen selling things to Skoda. They're all part of the same company. So there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned there, Andy, the Local Government Housing Act 1989, and so would this transfer would have to be compliant with that, but also was it the General Disposals Wales regulation? So can we be assured that this meets all legal regulations for transferring land or assets from one department effectively to another?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a housing guy, but I would argue that yes, it does. Clive has considered the report. I don't know if Clive's with us today. I can't see on the screen. But we have, as you can see, Clive has considered the Welsh Government regulations from 2003, and this report would not have come to members. I can assure you, if there was any risk of the council doing anything that was not in full compliance with the law.
Okay,
yeah,
so then my
that's
next
fully
question would have been
compliant.
about what legal advice you've taken. So you're saying we've spoken to our internal legal advice, so we're sure that this is.
Yes, absolutely, Chair.
Oh.
And also I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. So
Okay, I can see a few hands up now. So Councillor Pete Lewington.
Thank you, Chair. I think a few of us may have received a mail yesterday from the scouts that use the community centre there in the cow shack, and it did sort of touch on a point I just wanted to ask. It looks to me, if I've understood it right, that the car park currently has 450 spaces for parking. But if I look at paragraph 2.9, that will then reduce down to about 56. Now that seems a big loss of car parking, not only for the cow shack, the community centre that's there, not only for the town centre, but also for when Welshpool hosts events. So I was just wondering what considerations have been taken into account for the loss of almost 400 parking spaces.
Thanks. Happy to respond, Chair.
Yep, please do so. Yeah.
Thanks. I think it's an important question and one that will be for the community as a concern. But we're committed to working with the Scout organisation that's based in the top left of that car parking site. We understand that they'll need access across in order to access their facility, and we're committed to working with them to ensure that they've got some parking spaces to ensure that they can use their building. We wouldn't make development plans without doing that. We're responsible and considerate, and we would hope to be a good neighbour to the Scouts with the development. There is a significant reduction in the car park spaces that will be left, but we've predicated that based on usage and figures from car park sales and surveying. I've been to the site a number of times myself, and it is, from my own observation, underused currently. But we have to balance these things too, don't we? Because we've got a housing crisis in the county, and Welshpool is an area where this is under significant pressure and more pronounced than it is in other bits of Powys. So we have to take responsible action to act and build houses on the sites available to us to ensure that we can address those concerns for, families in Powys to have a safe and secure home. There is, I think, alternative parking provision within the town as well that can be utilised. This isn't the only option, and events, of course, are important, and where we can, we'll accommodate them. We cannot take forward our significant corporate objective of building new council houses if we stall because of these concerns. I think these concerns can be addressed. I think the service is working to address them, but I think we have to take the action to build the homes we need.
Okay, Pete.
Sorry, my fingers are a bit slow going across the bottom. Sorry, it's a big hands, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Matthew. I guess the only bit there, just exploring the balanced bit a little bit more, if I may, is I guess the car park may be underutilised at the moment due to the higher parking charges. And I guess, and I do agree, we need more housing. You know, don't get me wrong on that. But I guess in that balanced view, are we also balancing, if you like, the needs of the businesses to attract shoppers and to get people into town, as well as events, and just trying to make sure that all that's been taken in the round?
Yeah, again, I think, you know, that they're legitimate questions to raise. Of course, the people who live in the houses that we build will be using the town. It'll be their town. It'll be their community. They'll be shopping on the high street. You know, they'll be contributing to the economy and the fabric of the community. So I think it's a win-win, really. And where, you know, car parking is taken away, I think we have to understand that that car park is not full every day. The data from the machines tells us that. I've asked the service the questions, and I'm assured that, you know, if you look at the data, there is significant capacity in that car park the majority of days. So I don't think that should be a barrier to us making that development. And I think that we should remember that where we create homes in our communities, the people who will live in our council houses will more often than not be spending money in the local economy, supporting independent local retailers too.
Lovely. Thank you. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. And, you know, very much in the same vein, Councillor Peters asked a lot of what I was wondering about. You know, it was interesting to read comments from Councillor Richard Church as the local member to hear about what the local sort of opinions on the area are. I suppose, firstly, I should say it does seem, when you read through the papers, a very sensible way, use our underused assets from the council to deliver against some of the objectives around affordable housing and the needs that have been identified in areas. So it does sound really sensible, and I just want to make sure that we can, I suppose, defend against attacks with actual data. So Councillor Matthew mentioned about information on how much they're underutilised and that the majority of days the car park is not full. But I just wonder how often, firstly, that it is full. And I know in the papers it says it's difficult to identify, but you know, you can do it, I suppose. You can see where ticket sales are going up and then they suddenly stop going up because nobody can buy a ticket because it's full. And then so that was my main question, really, is just to see whether or not we've got robust data so we can defend against these sort of questions about the use of the car park.
Yeah, I suppose additional to that then, Councillor Chloe, is asking the question, have you looked at the car parking across Welshpool as a whole? So there would be other car parks in Welshpool that maybe people would have chosen this one if it's there on certain days of the year, but if that's no longer there due to it being housing, is there alternatives somewhere within Welshpool that, you know, have we looked at the whole car parking situation of the whole town? I don't know, Matthew or Andy, if you can.
Yeah, thanks. So you know, I think there are 3 parking machines in the car park, and the assurances I've had from the service are that the one where the majority of ticket sales are coming from is the machine that's located in the area of the car park that we don't intend to develop on.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's a good indicator. People aren't going to walk out their way to purchase the ticket. They're going to buy it from the nearest one to where they're parking. I don't know how that's changed since we've had the introduction of the parking app. And of course, that would make it more difficult to measure, but that's a really recent addition. In terms of car parking across the town, I think we've got head of highways with us who might be able to provide assurances around the additional capacity that Powys have got for car parking within Welshpool. But you know, there is opposite this car park another car park attached to a supermarket retailer as well. So I'm confident that we're not making a decision here that's going to be harming the ability to park. But we also have to recognise as well that whilst, you know, travelling by car is, you know, a choice that people have to make. We want to encourage active travel as well and use of public transport where possible. And we made a really important decision last week about supporting the public transport network. So, you know, car travel isn't the only option for people in our towns. Most people can, you know, walk, cycle, scoot or bus around their locality if they're living in Welshpool town itself.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Chloe, your hand is still up.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I had one more point. It relates to the email yesterday that we probably all received. In the email, they suggest that there's been a field, and you can see it on the maps that's been identified as a potential site. Obviously, we want to keep green spaces in the area. I just wondered whether you could add any clarification as to why there's a feeling that that area has been earmarked for development as well, or whether that's something that's maybe a bit of misinformation or misunderstanding somewhere.
Thanks. We in the housing service are not aware of that site. And, you know, our preference would be to develop this grey/brown belt site over a green site. We need, you know, where possible to, you know, protect our green spaces for future generations. And if we've got options to develop the type of site we're talking about here over that, then, you know, my preference is to do that.
Okay, thank you. I can see Diane has put her hand up. Did you want to come in at that point, Diane?
Yes, I think they might be referring to, there was a call for sites for development under the local development plan process. So it might be that that site was put forward under that process. That doesn't mean to say that it's been accepted in the local development plan until obviously we publish our local development plan in a future date. So I think that might be where that suggestion has come from.
Okay, thank you, Diane. So I wanted to ask some questions around the actual housing that's being proposed to be built. And I know we, as a council, have to stick to the housing regulation for environmental features, etc. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the new homes and how they will meet those energy efficiency and climate resilient standards, and some assurance that the type and style of houses will meet the demand in terms of numbers of bedrooms, etc. And how they will help us respond to the sort of homeless strategy that we have in Powys.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Well, all our homes that we build, because we have Welsh Government social housing attached to them, have to meet the highest environmental standards, which Welsh Government mandates. So they will be, as far as we can, very energy efficient, and we'll use electricity as the main fuel for heating. And we hope that electricity is generated in a way that doesn't burn fossil fuels. So it will be very, very much about that. In terms of the bedrooms and the types of houses, I think the report, I haven't got the report in front of me because I'm sharing a laptop with Councillor Dorrance, but it does include a variety of housing, and that is based upon housing, you know, the number of households and the type of households registered with homes in Powys. Yeah, we do obviously have the option during the planning process to sort of alter that mix if housing demand changes. So we do have that. But effectively, that's what we will do. We have a housing design guide, which is approved by Welsh Government, and a standard house type, which we can change facades on that to meet local vernaculars. And those houses will be designed and made to look as if they fit in with the Welshpool vernacular. I'm very, very keen to make sure that social housing does not leap out and say social housing. It should just look like a house that anybody else lives in. It's just regular, nice, pleasant housing. And that's why we've got a design guide. That's why we've got standard house types. The type of home that you're pleased to get home to after a day at work that looks nice and welcoming, and will still look nice and welcoming in 100 years' time. The analogy I always use is Bourneville Village in Birmingham, over 120 years old, and it still looks good. That is what we're trying to achieve. So people just look at it and go, do you know what? Those guys did a good job. So I can assure you the houses will be energy efficient. They will be designed to be low maintenance, because the other thing we have to think about is we're running these homes at the moment on an average rent of £118 a week. So we have to design them to be low maintenance. And that's only fair on tenants as well, so we don't have to keep repairing them. And we want them to last a long time. I've said at this committee and many others, every home in Powys has got to last 1,500 years at the current rate of replacement. So we're building homes for not just this generation, but many generations to come. And that's what we're trying to do here. Livable, it's a nice place to live, maintainable, and long-lived.
And with all those energy efficiencies, cheap to run, hopefully, for the residents, isn't it? Yeah. Councillor Pete, so we need to be wrapping this up in a few more minutes, but I just got another few questions. But Councillor Pete Lewington.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just a couple of comments, hopefully quick. Sorry, just back to the car parking, and I won't labour it too much, but the underutilised point, I guess it would be interesting to know if we're just comparing with, say, current usage, which is obviously affected by the increase in the car parking charges, or if, say, we've had a little look back on 2 years data, 3 years data, to see if there was a major change there when it may have been being used more because of the lower parking charges. So just a bit of clarity on that one. And the other one, Chair, if I may, was and I know we've only just expressed an interest in participating in the Home Office scheme for asylum seekers, but I didn't see any mention of that in this paper. So therefore, is it fair to assume that this will just be for Paris residents?
Thanks, Chair. Happy to respond
Yeah,
if it's
please do.
possible. Okay. On that last point around the expression of interest for the asylum dispersal scheme, we've been very clear throughout the process that that has absolutely no impact on our building programme for social housing. It's completely separate. So our target of building 350 new council homes by 2031 is unaffected by our participation in that scheme. Our participation in that scheme, should it proceed, will provide additional capital funding directly from the Home Office for the development of additional social housing units for the housing stock. So these two things are not the same. They're not linked in that regard. On the point about the car parking usage, I don't believe that we've seen a reduction in our car parking usage of any significant number with the changes in fees. We've got the Cabinet Member for Highways and the Head of Highways on the call, and it might be helpful to hear from them on this. But let's just put this into context. This is about building new council houses. We're proposing to build 32 council homes on a site that is not serving the council well in terms of its assets currently. Those 32 homes are really important, but they're nowhere near enough. We have 414 people on the housing list with Welshpool as their first choice. So this is a small change that we're trying to make to help some people realise a secure and affordable home. So let's just keep the context on that. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
That's our priority. That's what we're trying to deliver.
Lovely, thank you. I can see Councillor Jackie's got a hand up, but we haven't got long left. And actually, I wanted to ask questions. I feel the car park issue has been sort of covered in the paper and in your answers there. But I just wanted to ask some questions about what are the key risks for delivering this in terms of the costings set out, our current costings for building a house, materials and everything. So there's going to be issues there with gaining planning consents. There's going to be time delays, one expects. So have we factored in mitigations, you know, that if there's a delay in getting planning, if the costs of materials rise, et cetera, and how can we respond, you know, if construction costs rise or grant funding's delayed, you know, in terms of getting this project up and running and getting those houses that are clearly needed?
Thanks, Chair. All projects come with a level of risk, particularly ones of this size. The service has factored in all of those risks within the proposal, and we are confident that, you know, given the assessment of the risk and mitigation and the controls that we've got in place as a service area, that we can manage that and deliver the project. The big risk, of course, is completely out of our control, is the Senedd elections. There could be a change of government in Cardiff Bay. The current government has assured that the social housing grant is there to the end of this Senedd term, but we don't know what would happen after, should there be a change of administration. But that one is completely out of our control, and we're not able to manage that risk as a council.
Okay, yeah, understandable. Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring this to a close. There aren't any more hands up from the committees, but committee, we need to make some recommendations on this report. In light of what's been discussed here, I think it is appropriate that we ask that that email that some of us have received is forwarded to Cabinet and that they review the contents of that prior to making a decision. And that's with regard to an email about the reduction in parking. But in terms of the other things, members, do you feel that we've had satisfactory evidence that there is a demand for affordable, secure homes in Welshpool? And I would suggest, having read this report, we've got that. Are we overall, are we sure that this is the right location in terms of the car park? So members, over to you. Just a couple of minutes, your recommendations, please. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that all makes, it makes sense. I think from what we've heard about, the quality of the homes and the need in the area, using an underutilized space, it makes good sense to use this for new housing. I just wanted to add to the bit you mentioned about the email from yesterday, as well as Cabinet reviewing it. I think a full response would be really good to make sure that the resident is fully informed of what's happening, and that all the information that we've heard today is passed on as well.
Yep, I think we can add that to our recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Chloe. Councillor Liz.
Councillor Angela, apologies. Can I just check that the committee is happy with that recommendation? It needs to just be voted on by everybody to make sure you want me to put that down.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do them one at a time. Yeah, fine. So members,
Thanks.
are you happy that we make that recommendation, that the contents of that email? Yeah, hands are going up. And as Chloe added on the end there, that the, yeah, okay, that's good. Chloe, you've put your hand back up. Did you want to add to that? No. Okay. Councillor Liz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure really that the content of the email needs to be considered again by Cabinet, but I'm not going to sort of argue on that really. Just to say, I read the information from the local member, from the 151 officer, and from the legal officer. And as far as I can see, there's nothing that we've discussed that's in contrary to what's been said there. So, I think that's good evidence that I'm happy with the the proposal, and great that we could get 32 homes to put that 414 people, reduce that list. So thank you to Andy and Matthew for bringing that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Liz. And Councillor Pete Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess just the one bit I sometimes struggle with is I do understand and I do accept the need for the homes, and it does seem like a good site to use, but I don't fully think we do look at what I call the balanced picture. So we do the homes, and I think even Councillor Matthew there said we need to focus on the homes, but we haven't really got, if you like, a cost analysis of the impact of losing those parking spaces on, say, town centre business, for example. So that's a little bit anecdotal what we're taking there versus the desired need for the homes. And so I'm not saying we don't need the homes. I just don't get full evidence to weigh the other side of the coin, if that makes sense.
Okay, so are you suggesting a recommendation there, Councillor Pete?
Well, I think my recommendation would, I would be supporting the homes, but yes, I think whether it's a request for future to perhaps get a bit more information around, the other side of the scales, to see if we can have a bit more scientific, if that's the right word, analysis of what losing those 400 spaces would mean on, say, the businesses and the local economy.
Okay, thank you. So I think from that then, members, as a scrutiny committee, we're saying we actually support this paper and we recognise the need for those homes. But as previously said, we're just going to ask Cabinet to take careful consideration of the points made in the email that will be shared, which is really making the points that Councillor Pete is making about the impact on loss of parking spaces to the town. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Councillor Matthew and Andy, for bringing that very worthwhile paper forward to us, and we wish you good luck with getting that supported by Cabinet and hopefully bringing those new homes to Welshpool. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the winter maintenance report. So we're on pages 49 to 112 of our large pack. And who do we have with us here now? Bear with me 1 second. We have Councillor Jackie Charlton. Welcome again, Jackie. John Forsey, the Head of Highways, Transport and Recycling. And I think, yeah, we have Sean James, Senior Manager for Highways. So welcome, everybody. And shall I hand over to you, Councillor Jackie, to introduce your paper?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'll do a short introduction and then I will hand over to Sean James on some technical issues. So the paper today maps the progress and the key developments on phase 2 of our winter routes policy, a crucial matter for Powys, given our extensive geographical area and the vital importance of consistent winter services. The first cabinet paper on phase 2, winter routes, was presented on the 28th of March 2023, and this paper introduced several essential elements: the new policy framework, a structured tier system, the clearly defined criteria for route selection, and the proposal to conduct a public consultation. Our revised framework draws directly from the National Winter Service Research Group, ensuring our approach is underpinned by nationally recognised best practice. This is especially important as our existing policy was written over 20 years ago. In the time since, routes have been approved on an ad hoc basis, sometimes swayed by various factors, leading to a lack of consistency across Powys. We recognise that such inconsistency is no longer acceptable or effective for delivering equitable service throughout our region. We proceeded with a comprehensive public consultation from the 3rd of April to the 15th of May in 2023. And during this period, every councillor was encouraged to actively participate and engage with the proposed framework. We wanted to ensure that the framework reflected both expert guidance and local understanding. Further, we held a local member consultation on the 23rd of September to the 27th of October in 2024, providing another opportunity for member input and feedback. And the policy development now we should be looking at is developing the matrix, which is in Appendix 3. And as soon as the paper is approved, we will hopefully be using that matrix. But in the meantime, for the Scrutiny Committee this morning, I will ask Sean James to explain the matrix to you so you can understand what that actually means. On September 2023, the Scrutiny Committee was introduced to the first Cabinet paper, the framework, the tier structure, and the criteria underpinning them. The committee also considered the outcomes from the public consultation and the amendments made to the tiers as a result. At that meeting, several important points were raised. They included the explanation of gritting matrix provided much needed clarification, which the committee found particularly helpful. So I hope the matrix today will be helpful to you. And it was proposed that the final report be submitted to Cabinet. Concerns were voiced at the public engagement exercise was unfortunately quite poorly received. So you may want to scrutinise that today as well. So in summary, after a thorough process of consultation, review and amendment, we now bring forward these final proposals. Today's paper reflects both national best practice and local perspectives, aiming to deliver a fair, consistent and high quality winter service for every community in Powys. I know there will be questions about the reach that we have on with our gritters, and that's where the matrix will help. So I'm hoping that Sean's explanation will give you some food for thought and help you with your questions. But also just to confirm that during last winter when we had Storm Bert, we realised that the salt piles were being washed away, and this wasn't appropriate for the way that we want to deliver and protect our local communities. So this year, and you may want to interrogate this as well, our plan is to put grit bins out where we've normally had salt piles, and to help those harder to reach communities and harder to reach areas. So with that, I'll hand over to Sean just to explain the matrix.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Jackie. Good morning, Sean. Welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, so in effect, we've got 5 tiers excluding the trunk road because we haven't included the trunk road within this. So within those tiers, we previously presented to Scrutiny and Cabinet the criteria that we've used in order to assess those tiers.
Sean, if I could just interrupt you and let members know, we're talking about the tiers on page 77 of the full pack document, if they want to have a look while you're talking us through it. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so effectively we've got a tier 1, which is what we would call is our emergency tier. So effectively, that is what we would go down to if we had a fuel strike or salt shortage, staff shortage, sickness, whatever, isn't it? So that's sort of like our minimum tier, which would be the tier 1. Tier 2, this is what we're proposing in terms of our preferred option, which would be option 1 and tier 1 and tier 2 would form our preferred option. Tier 2 includes the likes of hospitals, education facilities, and doctors' surgeries. So that's effectively our first preferred option. In terms of that, then we would be putting forward a community route. The community route would be what we would call is our tier 3, which is mainly around providing public bus core routes and strategic bus routes, and making sure that they're salted and access to main buses and railway stations. Below that, then we have another 2 tiers, which is tier 4 and 5. They wouldn't be included within any precautionary treatment. Just to go back to the community route wouldn't be acted every time. There would be certain weather circumstances that we would initiate the community routes. So normally, in terms of the weather forecasting, in terms of a precautionary treatment, we would look at the forecast. We get a forecast in at 1 o'clock, and we get a forecast in at 6 o'clock. Those are the fixed forecasts. We get forecasts in between that time. We make decisions based on those. We typically, in an average year, we tend to go out about 120 times. That's not 120 days, mind you, because that's sort of split between evening and mornings as well. So it's going to be somewhere between maybe 80 days or something that we go out. Typically, that's for conditions that that show hazards in terms of freezing. So mainly it's between when there's water on the road and when there's when cold conditions are forecast. For the community route, we would be looking to, not probably, but we will be looking to action that as and when there is a chance of heavy snow or where there are prolonged cold conditions. So that is when we would look to action the community route. Below that, we have tiers 4 and 5. Tiers 4 and 5, which is currently what we would use purely just on salt heaps and grit bins.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So basically there you mentioned about the system to activate gritting, Sean. So you get a weather report. Is that sort of the Met Office or something? You get a regular weather report and then you make a decision based on temperature, or?
It's yeah, I don't know whether we should say the company that we use, but
Oh, right. Okay. So yeah.
We have a company that gives us the forecast.
Okay.
From that forecast, yes, as you say, there'll be a temperature profile, a precipitation profile, a hazard forecast, and whether ice is likely to form or not. And on that basis, then we would then choose our windows as to when we would choose the time for the action to go out.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for explaining that. So shall we go to questions now, Councillor Jackie? Are you ready? Are you happy with that introduction to your papers? We have got, members, quite some substantial papers here and graphs and charts, a lot of information in here, but over to you for your questions. Councillor Chloe, first off the starting blocks.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation on this. Obviously something that our rural communities are very interested in, and certainly something that I get talked to a lot about. So something just initially for clarification from me, on page 83 of the large packet, it says there's an 130,000 under-delivered saving. I just wondered if you could clarify what that is for, just because I don't know. And then also looking at the tiers that we've just been discussing, I saw on there that school routes were listed as sort of tier 5, I think, on there. So just wondering if you could just clarify how that decision's been made, because it's obviously it'd be good if people can get to their schools. I've put the wrong page on here now, so I can't find it. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, page 78, the tiers. Hang on, I think schools were higher than that, but yeah, Jackie, who do you want to answer that?
For the
Do you want me
undelivered,
to, do you want me to come in or?
yeah, if you want to come in, Sean, yes, I'm very happy to do that, for you to do that, because you can explain the undelivered savings, but also explain what we do with schools, because it's slightly different with schools.
Undelivered savings is that we've had a 130k saving on HTR really with regards to maintenance for quite a substantial time now. So we've been rolling that forward for the last, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years. So that's the undelivered saving. I think when you look at the paper, we're looking to achieve 87,000 of that saving. So there will still be a residual underachievement of saving through this option.
Yeah, and when we're talking about undelivered savings, we're talking about cuts that have been made previously to the department that you're carrying forward because you're not able to make those cuts and deliver the service in its current form. Is that what we're saying?
It's not 130,000.
Yeah, I suppose just to repeat it, isn't it? We have a savings target of 130,000 for winter maintenance, which we've been rolling forward. So it's considered undelivered at the moment because it's within our budget as we need to be able to deliver that. The proposal we're putting forward is going to deliver £87,000 of that. So there will be a residual unachieved.
Reducing that under save or however.
And we would look to have to make a correction then within the FRM as to how we resolve that residual saving, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'd either need to write it off or provide another saving somewhere else in order to achieve that. In terms of the school routes, I think education facilities are actually in the tier 2, but we only provide one route to the school, which is the main route to the school. I think where you're talking about the school bus, those are the feeder routes into the school. So that's anybody coming into the school from any point in the catchment. So that's where we're saying those are all the tier 4s. Because we're not going to grit everybody's taxi or everybody's journey into the school from any point that they live in that catchment. We are providing one route, and that's been the policy since, well, that's the old policy, and we're continuing with that policy forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pete, I keep saying Pete Lewington, but actually we haven't got our other Pete here today. So Councillor Pete.
That's all right, Chair. No, thank you very much. Yeah, and thanks for the presentation, Sean. I've got 4 sort of points or questions, if I may, Chair. So first one is reading through the report, it looks like we are proposing to cut around 250 miles of road from the gritting routes, which could leave some areas, villages, businesses, etc., sort of like isolated in very harsh conditions that we currently experience. So for me, it's not only about the residents getting out of these areas, it's about emergency services, healthcare workers, etc., getting in. So my first point was how has that been assessed? Second question, again, the report talks about saving money. Again, as Councillor Chloe's touched upon there. But obviously, unfortunately, there could be a resulting impact of costs from, say, level of accidents that could occur from no longer gritting some of these roads. So I just wondered how or if that's been assessed. Thirdly, around the bins, the community bins, I guess there's an assumption there that residents are willing and fit enough to help on untreated roads. Plus, of course, that they can then get to the grit bins in the first place. So I guess again, what's plan B there if that can't be done? And fourth question, if I may, Chair, was again when I look at this, it does look a bit like a tick box exercise to rank roads for treatment. And I think the portfolio holder did touch upon it in her introduction. But again, I'm just keen to explore how the residents' feedback, especially that's based on their local knowledge, has been used in reaching these conclusions. And again, in terms of the balanced approach, we have a net zero target, which again acknowledge the bits for us all to do our bit to address climate change. But I do wonder then if this is abandoning the residents in remote locations to the resulting impact of those severe weather events. So again, how have we balanced those two things, please? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm happy to come back on that, Chair, if you
Okay,
want. I think I've
lovely.
got all your points here. The proposed cuts that you're talking about, Councillor Peter, yes, I do understand that is going to cause concerns. But if we go back to the reason why we've actually put these proposals forward for a new policy, is that the routes that we're using at the moment are so ad hoc that there are some people who are saying, yeah, it's fine, we're quite happy with what we got, but there are other people who are saying, sorry, you're not coming to us. Why is that? And we had to come up with an equitable approach that we can actually feel secure with in delivering our winter services. That's why we use the National Winter Service Research Group information to ensure that we're using all the correct information. We've got the evidence that we've been able to gather to put these tiers into place. And actually, it does make that more equitable. We're not delivering salt where it's actually not really needed, because there is no real reason to put that salt on those roads, because the impact is quite minor. So we have actually gone into that in quite some depth. And as you will imagine, not everybody's going to be happy with the routes that we've put up. That's always going to be the case, but that's the case now. So nothing has changed there really. What we are saying is that we are going to be putting out more grit bins, and I explained that earlier. One of the issues that we do have with grit bins is, and this is an awful thing to say, is people actually steal the salt. So we're hoping that our local county councillors and our town and community councils will actually help and support us in making sure that those grit bins are in the right place, they're being used by the right people for the right reasons. And that way, I think that we will actually be able to cover far more roads than we do now, and support those local communities. And they will be able to do something immediately, rather than having to wait for a lorry to come out and put the grit down. As far as accidents is concerned, I will hand over to Sean actually to see whether he can provide any response to that one, Councillor Peter. I mean, it's a very difficult one to actually provide the evidence for, but again, that's why we use the National Winter Service Research Group, so we can be sure that we're actually delivering what is the safest that we possibly can do. And we can't reach everybody. We're never going to be able to reach everybody, and there's always going to be somebody dissatisfied, and we can only do what we can do. If there's an emergency situation, then we will cover that as an emergency situation, and that again I think is covered in the report, and Sean can explain that a little bit more. Being able to get to grit bins, I'm hoping that our local communities are far more responsive and helpful than we could ever be as a local authority. We cannot send people out from depots to individual sites, but we can ask as county councillors and our town and community councils whether they can be extra vigilant in times of bad weather. And I know that's what normally goes out if we have extra bad weather. That's always the public cry. Can you help your neighbour? Can you do anything to support them? And I'm hoping that as county councillors, that is what we would do, and we would rise to that challenge. A tick box exercise? No, I don't think this is a tick box exercise. We've been working with this now for too long. I'm disappointed that we're still where we are now. I would have hoped that we could have done something much earlier than this. And also just to explain that the previous policy we had is over 20 years old. In fact, I think it's nearer 30 years old now. So we have to do something about that. And this is the proposal that you have before you today. So I hope that covers all the points. But if I could ask if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, that's okay. But could I just come in on regard to the salt bins, if possible? You've just answered that. So in the report, it talks about buying 100 new salt bins at £28,000. I'm on page 56, 4.21. And then it talks about the purchase and installation of the salt bins being £40,440. So sort of £12,500 for their installation. So Are they a complicated thing? I just assumed in my ignorance that it's just a green bin you plonk on the ground. So I just wondered about that cost. Is that?
I'll ask Sean to come at it, and I think actually we've improved on that figure since the paper's been written, but I will need Sean to confirm that, because we did say as part of the highways floor that we had in this year, that's what we were going to use some of that money for, was to increase the number of salt bins out there. So I'll just bring Sean in to answer that one. Can you also answer the one about emergency services, because I think that's quite important and does need to be mentioned here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sean. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, I think there's two things here, isn't there? There's
We're not quite hearing you, Sean. I think
sorry.
your microphone. That's it. That's better.
Right,
Thank
come
you.
forward. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, there's two sort of points here, isn't there? There's the precautionary treatment, which is what we're discussing today, isn't it? And then there's the reactive whiteout conditions in terms of emergency. So the whiteout conditions, that sort of all the processes that we got in place and protocols we got in place for that are all within the winter plan. That's not changing. So the way we react in order to respond will be the same. This is just about the precautionary treatments. In terms of whether it's a cut, I don't think it's necessarily a cut of 250 kilometers. I think what we're looking at is, I think we're looking at about the same number of kilometers with either option one or option either option two or option one. I think what we're looking at is just a different treatment for a certain percentage of those routes, and that will depend on the weather. It all comes down to basically, as an authority, we need to have a reasonably practical approach to winter maintenance. So as Jackie said, we can't do everybody all the same with gritters. That's just not financially or viable, and that wouldn't hold up in terms of reasonably practicable. So reasonably practicable is hard to define, but it's about resource, money, costs. But you know, it's only eventually determined really within the case of law, isn't it, in terms of going to court as to whether you were reasonably practicable or you weren't. But we do need a policy that we believe is reasonably practicable, and within that you do have that balance. And as you've talked about accidents, and you've talked about what we can do reasonably practicably. So we feel the way we split these tiers, the way we've put forward these routes, this is a reasonably practicable way forward that will hold up in that case in terms of our policy going forward, and bears consistency across in terms of other standards that are out there. So, and again, I would probably agree with Jackie. This is not a tick box exercise. This has been an exercise where I think Jackie sort of says we have a policy, an old policy. We don't necessarily have a policy. I'm not aware of a policy onto which we've based these routes previously. This actually sets out how and why we are doing these routes. So this is future-proofing us going forward as well. So should changes happen on the routes, we are able to make adjustments within the criteria that we've got. In terms of the salt bins and the questions regarding costs, I think Lynn might be better off in terms of answering sort of what the costs are involved in terms of the grit bins, but it's not necessarily just dump a pile of salt there, is it? In effect, you've got to go out to the site, look at the site, level off the site, put the bin in place, ensure that the bin is stable, and but Lynn might be able to answer a little bit more on those additional costs in installation. But I think the point is what we put in there is we're comfortable with the budget we put in there in order to deliver it.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Thank you. I think you've answered that really in terms of that. Just one thing to add on the salt bins. If the installation of the salt bins is helping to meet that sort of fairness and equity, so the rural areas will have the more salt bins, could I make a request that we have some sort of numbering system or QR system, and that these salt bins feature on the geo-discovery mapping? Because if we want the community to help us like they do in reporting street lights or whatever, they need to have an agile system where they can say this particular salt bin is empty and there's your location, and that would be, you know, a way of harnessing that local intelligence, I suppose.
Can I I
think
just
as a
quickly
service going
confirm.
forward, I think we're happy to look at the reviewing and improving the engagement we have with our communities.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can look at a more digital way
Yeah.
forward in terms of that, but there are difficulties in terms of QR codes, in terms of fading or being covered over and misused, and you end up in some
Or just a number like we have on street lights, you know,
we
just
could,
a simple
we
system,
could bring a
whatever you
number. I
choose.
think we did have a number. I think, yeah, that
Yeah.
there's work to do there. I appreciate that, and I think that's something that we will work on going forward, isn't it? But yeah, I think we'd like to approach it from a strategic point of view in terms of knowing that
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we put in place isn't just a snapshot position of, right, well, we've numbered all the bins. I think we need a bit more than that. We need to know, right, okay, so if we replace a bin, how is it going to be renumbered?
Yeah.
If we put out a new bin, how is that going to be added to the system? So I think
No, I think you've well
but
covered that, Sean. That's
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to overlabour the point. It was just a little comment, but I want to bring in the others. So we got Councillor Corinna and Liz with some questions to come in, and then we do again. I'm afraid members need to bring this to an end to come up with our recommendations. But Councillor Corinna first.
I'm very interested in salt bins because we need them at the Team Valley. But I thought it was a bit cheaper overall. It was like 40,000 for the whole thing, purchase and installation. But I'm really hoping that these bins will be in position by this autumn because we had some problems over last winter. But what I was going to do was ask about option 2 because it does show significant savings, and you do that by the community routes are only visited, I think, 10% of the different actions, and that's when it's prolonged weather event or something like that. And is there any, can you demonstrate that will be enough for the community tier? And it does also seem to, option 2 provides a lot of savings. It indicates that you need less gritters, staff and salt as I look through. And the vehicles, you need less vehicles than you did before. Why does changing the routes mean that happens? Thank you.
Well, in terms of the precautionary treatment route, that would be less, wouldn't it? Effectively, we'd have that community route. In terms of reducing the gritters, well, because in order to undertake the community route, we would do the community route during the day. That would be like a daytime response, whereas the precautionary routes would be done at the time of the action is made, whether that be in the evening or the morning. So, given that, and the 10%, I appreciate we you know, we've looked back to sort of historically. I think 10% in terms of that cost that we've sort of assumed. I think if we look at, we might have had snow once or twice last year, so that might have been 1 or 2 actions that we might have done on those routes. I don't think we had a prolonged period of cold last year, so I think if we were working on, say, 120 actions and we were looking at, say, 10%, so that's going to be about 12 actions a year. I think there's enough bunts in that, as you like, to sort of cover those extreme weather events that we would be looking at. But they can vary from year to year, so it's not a precise science. All this is based on an average financial year, which is basically it's just based on historic data in terms of what is our average. So that is what we based our budget on. So yeah, it's not precise. At the end of the day, if worse weather conditions appear and we have to go out 160 times, then we'll spend more money. So, and then we'll hit the risk reserve. So there's, yeah, it's not precise science.
No. So obviously from what you're saying, we're sort of trying to base our forward planning on the average of what's been done in the past, whilst recognizing what was done in the past might not have been perfect either, but you have to use the evidence to hand. Yeah, John is nodding away there. So yeah, thank you, Sean. Councillor Liz.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jackie and officers, because I can see it's a massive challenge with all these variables. My question's about the health and social care sector, and you know, every year I get loads of queries from residential homes, and you know, care homes about the areas leading up to their homes not being gritted. And I see in 8.6 that the idea is to sort of treat those on a ad hoc basis. But I just wondered, well, and I can also see that, you know, it's said that the evidence for that is the fact that these areas are sort of not used very much. I just wondered whether anyone could say a bit more about that and whether or not that came through on the survey, or whether that is just, you know, where has that evidence come from? Because, you know, the sense that I get is that, you know, older people and disabled people, you know, they do use vehicles more, they do move around more, perhaps than they might have done 20 or 30 years ago. So yeah, if you could say a bit more on that, I'd be really grateful. You know, and I'm guessing probably the salt bins might be, you know, a response to that particular challenge. And actually, I'm quite in favour of salt bins, because I do think that if they're in the right places and they're replenished, I think there has to be some responsibility on local communities, you know, to use those and to do what they can, you know, to make you know, roads and pathways for that matter safe. So it's just if someone asked me that question about how was the decision made, you know, to operate on an ad hoc basis, what am I going to say?
Well, we
I
did
can
go out.
see John's got his hand up, Sean.
Okay.
Did you want to come in at that point, John?
Yeah, I was just going to try and reassure Councillor Ramberg that extreme weather events, and certainly in my experience, there's been a lot of storm events and a lot of, you know, there's been less cold weather events, but the principles still apply where the relevant organisations come together, police, emergency services, the local authority, through the LRF, and we actively coordinate our plans. And I'll use an example. In my time in Powys County Council, I never ever thought, except it was a storm thing, but the same principles will apply. I never thought we'd have to get the Coast Guard out to go and find people where they were cut off in the community above Crickall because of storms. But we have that coordination. We also have, in terms of whiteout and really snowy events, we have a really good network of four-wheel drive volunteers who come out and assist us. We use our own four-wheel drive vehicles to get to those people who need to get to them, to support the services. So I don't see that as ever changing, as Sean has alluded to before. This is about a precautionary network and the matrix. But so I just want to be really careful how we interpret it. This is about, you know, the standard. You know, we have cold weather. There's a bit of freeze and snap to try and keep our communities active and mobile as best we can with the resources we can. I think it's really important that we put this into context. We set aside the trunk road element of the road. There's still about 5,000 kilometres of road that exists across Powys. It's a bit of a challenge.
Thank you.
Okay, so John, you mentioned the resources there, and obviously there will be some risks there if we don't achieve the savings targets. But I'm also interested that in the paper it talks about hoping that the trunk road, we're hoping that they're going to increase their contribution to a higher percentage. And do we know how likely that's to happen? And I just wanted to check, back in February, the council approved that the 1.2 million pounds that came from Welsh Government was going to be budgeted into highways for highways maintenance. Is any of that fund being used here for the winter maintenance? Because I think probably councillors assumed it would be for highways maintenance in the more traditional sense, tarmacking, etc. And I wondered if any work has been completed yet on how and where that money is going to be spent in that regard.
Are we talking specifically about the floor, Councillor Davis?
Yes.
Yes, so the money is in the base budget for this year. We've come up with a plan that we've got a member development session with next Monday, I think it is on the 16th, which we can explain what the principles. Okay. There's going to be a lot around preventative maintenance. I think it's really clear that this is revenue money, and when we start talking about laying tarmac, etc., down on the road, that's a highways capital expenditure. So perhaps what we're looking at with the extra floor money is more around preventative maintenance.
Okay, lovely.
We'll go into that in detail
in that session. Okay, so that's not being used here, but it sounds then that the money the trunk road provide for the maintenance of trunk roads, and you did say that this exclude. Did I get that right, Jackie? That we're talking here about the maintenance of the road network excluding the trunk road in terms of the winter maintenance.
Yes, yes.
But presumably that money that comes in from trunk road does contribute in terms of the overhead costs of road winter maintenance. So I'm just wondering, you know, if they're paying sort of a third of that overhead cost, you know, what's the risk if they don't agree to pay in more money, basically?
I think that risk is very low. I think
okay.
We've had previous talks with them in our one-to-ones, and they've sort of indicated that they would consider it.
Okay.
I think
yeah.
it'll be one of those things that, whilst the percentage proportion might go up in terms of what they pay, the actual amount that they pay is going to be less, because we'll have less scritters, for instance, isn't it? So it should balance off in effect. So it may not be that much of a net increase for them in any case.
Right, no, that's fair enough. That's good. Okay, Councillor Jackie, then last word to you before we members think of our recommendations.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that you don't get the wrong impression here. We don't do the winter maintenance on the trunk roads to make a profit.
No.
We do it with a payment comes in to cover our costs. So I just wanted to make sure that you know, the winter maintenance for the trunk roads that we get from Welsh Government is to cover the winter maintenance on the trunk roads.
No, appreciate that, but so obviously an element of that will be the vehicles, etc., won't it, to be able to deliver that service on the trunk roads? Yeah. Okay, so members, we've got no more hands up. We've run out of time, so we need some recommendations here. The report outlines the winter gritting routes and the measures they've taken. Are you satisfied with that? Are you happy to support the preferred option here? I think we're on option 2, wasn't it? Was the preferred option, and with that requirement for that extra money for the salt bins. Where are your thoughts going, members?
I'd support it.
You're happy to support that, okay. Councillor Bryan, I'm going to bring you in before Councillor Peake because we've not heard from you yet. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Sean, how many local members have had a one-to-one with the officers regarding their routes?
I think Alistair's probably the best one to come back on that. He did the member engagement back in October, so Alistair might be able to let you know how many people turned up to the drop-in sessions and how many emails we had, etc. I don't know, Al, are you there?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. If you go to Appendix 6, it's at the very top. There's 2 Appendix 6. No, it's fine. It's at the very top, so it's not easy to sort of pick out. But effectively, we ran 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of pre-planned sessions. 2 members were booked in. 1 sort of turned up. We did an ad hoc session then for people that couldn't make it. 5 were booked in on that and turned up. And then the appendix also details the people who then responded online. So in terms of one-to-one, it was 6 people that I saw in person. And I think there was a couple of emails, there was about 4 or 5 email responses that I dealt with as well, that were additional to that.
Well, can I ask, would it be possible for each member to have their route and their tier emailed to them?
I think the routes are in the pack there, Councillor Bryan.
Yeah. But that's not going to every member, is it?
I can produce plans, if I can produce the plans of...
Okay, well, Councillor Bryan, we can make that a recommendation that we ask that the routes for each area be sent to members, if you feel that's a...
Yeah, I thought we'd already had them back in, I don't know when, but...
You were supplied, well, you were sent them in September, October of 2024.
So. Yeah, I think
so we have done that local member engagement. I wouldn't necessarily...
I just remember how long they were, you know, how long it took to plough through them.
Okay, Councillor Peake, you've got your hand up. Have you got a recommendation for us?
Two things to consider, if I may, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would support the recommendation, but I heard a lot of words there about the policy being 30 years out of date. So I don't know whether or not we could add in there that it would be a good idea to update the policy. And then the other one, I think we probably shouldn't focus on the savings as the reason for doing this, because it is a risk-based approach, and I think the figures that are in there are based on past averages.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no guarantee that we will achieve those savings. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And of course, there are, we didn't touch on it in here, but there are those environmental considerations as well, aren't there? And they're well documented in the report as well. So just check with Gemma. Did you get some recommendations from that?
So I've made the note that you'd like, the committee have observed that the policy should be updated, that you would like it to be noted more as a risk-based approach than a savings approach, and the environmental issues to be noted. But for it to be a recommendation, the committee needs to expressly state that and vote on it, please.
So members, do you feel those comments should be a recommendation? Are you happy just to make them as comments and say that we support the option, the preferred option in the document? Councillor Pete and Councillor Brian, you've got your hands up. Are you happy to support?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind at least seeing updating the policy as a recommendation to make sure the overall framework's there, but I don't mind about the other point just being noted.
There we are. Okay, and Brian, likewise, yeah, there we are then. So one recommendation that the policy be updated and that Scrutiny support the preferred option in the document, and the comments as you've said, Gemma. So thank you very much. Thank you, members. Right, we're going to move on. I'm sorry we're trotting through it here today, but there we are. We're going to move on then to item 9, which is the Climate and Nature Report. So again, we have with us Councillor Jackie Charlton, portfolio holder for Green Powys. I think we have Diane Reynolds, the corporate director, and Daniel, I think, yes, Daniel Burgess is here, head of service. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. And again, I'll hand over to Councillor Jackie to introduce the paper. And thank you to all our officers for the previous item. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you from me to the officers on the previous item, because it is quite a complex area, and I know it does touch members regularly. As I noticed last year when the salt all disappeared after Storm Bert. But anyway, we're now on to the Climate and Nature Annual Report. This is our first full year report since the establishment of the Climate and Nature Members Steering Group, and it represents a significant milestone. The report outlines the breadth of the work undertaken across 6 key work streams, which includes buildings, land, nature and rivers, mobility and transport, governance, and energy and supply chain, as well as our involvement in collaborative initiatives such as the Severn Valley Water Management Scheme and Growing Mid Wales Regional Energy. And I'm hoping members will be able to catch up with this later on in July, as there will be a presentation on those initiatives coming to you. So the committee is asked to consider the report because the council has declared both a climate and a nature emergency, recognising the substantial risks these pose to our communities. The report includes an assessment of our progress against the Netherwood Commission priorities, which we commissioned early on in the steering group, a summary of emissions reductions and wider social and economic benefits, and a dip into a forward plan of actions we must prioritise to accelerate the delivery towards our net zero target. So whilst this report is for information and does not propose any direct changes, it is a crucial tool for transparency and accountability. It helps us to evaluate how effectively we are at embedding climate and nature considerations into our governance, our risk management, and our service delivery. And I'm sure you've all noticed now with any cabinet paper that comes forward to us now is very clear on what the impact is on both climate and nature. The next step is that we are now preparing a route map due this summer, autumn time. We're preparing and working on that now, which will guide our work through thematic boards. link our carbon accounts more directly to net zero targets, and embed climate and nature into our corporate objective. We will be expected to report back to Cabinet on these key elements. And we are currently progressing the key performance indicators, which will inform our progress in next year's annual report. I want to acknowledge the support of the economy team, the Cabinet assistants, and all members who have contributed to this work from our climate and nature steering group and beyond. So we have gone out territorially on this as well. And as we move forward, we must do so within a tighter resource constraints, which will require innovation and resilience. This isn't just about compliance, it's about transformation. The strategy is a key component to our broader sustainable powers vision, ensuring our services are financially, socially, and environmentally sustainable. It supports our climate and nature emergency declarations and will help us to secure capital investment from Welsh Government to upgrade our infrastructure. And we're hoping that that will also encourage private investors to look at powers as a green economy. I want to highlight that this strategy is not just a technical document, it's a statement of intent. It reflects the values of the Council and the expectations of our residents who have shown strong support for the direction of our travel. I hope you'll be able to support this report or perhaps, provide us with some more information, but it's a long report. And I know that you were sent from John Evans yesterday, hopefully, the press release that went out, which does also outline some of the massive improvements that we've been able to achieve over the last 2 years. So I'll shut up there, Chair, and I'll wait for the questions. But as you said, we've got Diane and Daniel here. They're strong on the economy, but actually their roots are in climate and nature, in the climate and nature emergency. So I'll hand you over to them now if you need to have any questions answered.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Jackie. So members, do you have questions? Councillor Corinna.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm on the climate steering committee with other people on this call, and we've had 2 such documents in our pack. I think you've presented the information in different ways. The first document in our pack is pithier. It is quite shortened in the bullet points, covering various subject areas, and it's also a little bit critical, like on page 167, you say there's not enough staff time to get the maximum grants that are available for the local authority, so it's slowing us down here. Could you please explain why you've taken this different approach in the 2 different reports? Thank you.
Okay, who would like to? Jackie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I missed some of that question, Corinna, because I needed to pick up a paper that I had to take my headset on. So can you just explain to me just quickly what the differences are? And because they are very different papers and they come from very different areas, and the response I'm going to give is probably not necessarily going to help with your question because they are very, very different. But if you could just briefly say what the question is again, that will help me.
Oh, okay. I'm just, we've got 2 different papers in our report with a similar foreword from yourself, but one is much shorter and it also contains a page which says we haven't got quite enough resources to take forward our plan. The second report is much lengthier, contains sort of more narrative descriptive.
All right.
Messaging.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yes, the first report, the shorter report, is the public report. The other report is where we started from, and we reduced that considerably because we felt actually if this was going to go out to into the public domain, people will not read a report which is hundreds of pages long. It's not quite hundreds of pages long, but it was a very intense report. So what we did was shorten the paper. we've put in links rather than lots of explanations. And I think what we have is a much easier report to read in the first instance. So in that particular report, so one's public, the other one is where we built up all our information from. So I don't know whether that answers your question. Sorry, I misinterpreted your question to begin with.
Okay. Councillor Corinna's nodding. So Councillor Pete Lewington.
Sorry, Chair, just moving the sausages around the keyboard again. Apologies. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, yeah, and I guess thanks for some sort of very thorough and comprehensive reports. First one is a comment, and then the second one's a question. I just wonder if there could be a summary of those reports somewhere, because I'm just afraid if that is published or lands on somebody's desk, I don't know what the appetite would be to actually read that, and therefore a very good report, the information contained therein could be lost. So I guess just to try and entice some readers in, if there could be a little bit of a summary of it before you delve into the major information. The other question I've got is looking through, and I was looking at the emission reduction section. I didn't see any mention in there of active travel routes and active travel networks. And I mean, I think for me, they're a very interesting concept in terms of sort of reducing car usage, reducing carbon emissions, and getting residents fitter. So I just wondered why travel routes weren't in there, and if they could be included. I know the portfolio holder is well aware of my particular issue and has been
Yes.
very understanding, and we've had some good conversations in the past. So thanks, Councillor Checky. But yeah, I just wondered, A, why they're not in there, B, if they should be, and if they should be, can we divert some funds towards getting those active travel routes, please?
I know you're gonna
Don't blame me
you
for trying.
keep at it. I will never forget you. Don't worry, Councillor Peter. You are in the forefront of my mind, but you know the reason why we're not able to help you on that one. But we will do our best. Just to come back to your question, my understanding is that active travel routes are territorial. They're not a service that we run. So the way we run our carbon accounts at the moment, the way that we are able to show whether we're going to reach net zero by 2030 is the services, so our own buildings, our own vehicles, our own services that we run. We can measure that in our carbon accounts. We can't measure what people are doing themselves personally. So it's a very difficult one. It's a very good point. And I'm sure someone somewhere, and I'm sure if we interrogated this with Welsh Government, we might be able to come up with some responses to that. But whether that achieves what we're interested in our rural areas, because as you know, active travel is much more intensive in our urban areas than it is in our rural areas. So it's possibly easier to measure that elsewhere. But I think that was your question there. So hopefully I've responded to that one.
Yes, thank you, and understood. Thanks, Councillor Jackie.
Okay, Councillor Chloe.
Thank you. And like Corinna, on the Climate and Nature Advisory Group, so it's really good to see all the stuff coming forward and to get a bit more information about this. I've just got, I guess, two kind of questions, I suppose. And it might be showing my ignorance, so bear with me if it's completely wrong, but it lists a whole load of deliverables on page 159, 160, saying that the group has achieved these already. But I don't know whether, or maybe I haven't, some of these I feel like maybe aren't actually delivered yet. So things like the action plan and opportunity mapping, all of these things, I think they're definitely planned to be done, but I think the report suggests that they have been achieved. So just a bit of clarity on that, and it might be that I just haven't seen them and I've completely missed it, and these have all been done, but that would be great. And then the other point is just around the next steps. I think when you see all of this activity, it's really exciting to feel like there's loads of things happening, and then we've got this report and we're tracking it all. And I think for the next steps bit, it would be really good to see maybe just get an idea from people on the timescales for when these things might be done. We've got the work stream for 2025-26 on there. But there's activities we're planning that are going to be longer term, just like a really brief sort of we've got a plan for a longer time period? It might be really good to talk about it in here as well.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to come back briefly on that, but I'll ask Diane to come in and just say what has been delivered and where we are with our work streams going forward. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We have actually done an awful lot. Some of that is started. We're doing the work. We've still got a long way to go. All of these are mainly long-term projects. So I think, you know, we can probably make that a bit clearer, Councillor Chloe, so that there isn't any confusion there. But if I just hand over to Diane just to say what we have delivered, because I think when we started doing this annual report, we sort of sat there and we said, well, what are we going to put in it? And actually, there was an amazing amount of work that's been undertaken, and we've never actually collated it or collected it in any way before. So when we started to collect it, it became very exciting because there was a huge amount going on that we were just not recognizing, and it wasn't really sort of being written down anywhere in any one particular place so we could see what the deliverables were. So I'll stop waffling on now and hand you over to Diane.
Okay, Diane.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton. So the original plan was developed from, as we said, the work from Dr. Alan Netherwood. So we chose the priority of those objectives. So Dr. Alan Netherwood came up with a set of recommendations. We chose the priority ones and we developed action plans against those priority elements. So those were the action plans that we are referring to in the report. Now, over time, as more interest has grown and more people have come on board, more services have started working with us, it became very clear that the ambition, the challenge, the level of knowledge and expertise was much more vast than we had ever kind of mapped in our first kind of action plans. So what we've been doing is actually having a further set of deep dives on specific topic areas where we're really testing out some of the areas of understanding across many stakeholders. And then from those deep dives, we need to develop a new set of action plans. So I think it's kind of like, yes, we did have a set of action plans, we did deliver them, but you know, we realized that things move and change all the time and our knowledge develops. So we're trying to do another set of action plans that will take us to the next stage. So that took us on our first little tentative step into making a difference in terms of climate and nature. We've now developed our understanding and our knowledge, and we'll be developing the next set, and they'll be ready by the end of September. We've been given a timeline, and then they'll be coming across to our climate and nature steering group. So I hope that makes that a bit clearer.
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, it's good. I guess so I'm really clear. So basically all these deliverables that are listed in here around, you know, action plans, assessments, opportunity mapping, they've all been delivered, but effectively they were just kind of they were high level, didn't provide the detail we needed, and we have to do them on an annual basis from now on, because I guess this is the 2024 report. So when we see the 2025 report, we'll have an updated plan. Is that for these ones? Is that about right?
I'm hoping that we'll get a long-term plan taking us up to 2030 in our action plan, so that we've got a very clear set of actions and an understanding of how our trajectory will work to get us to 2030 and delivering climate transmission and climate transition and 30 by 30. So those action plans should be much better developed. But of course, every year you reflect, don't you, and you have to update and you get better understanding, more knowledge. So they will be updated annually, but we are looking at a longer term set of action plans. So the first set were very annual, 1 year based and very short term.
Okay.
If I could come in very quickly as well, Chair.
Yep, please do.
Something that we haven't mentioned, I mentioned in the introduction, is that we've now started to put together a set of key performance targets as well, or key performance indicators.
Indicators, yeah.
So that is actually going to be incredibly important to us. And I think you were at the last meeting, Councillor Chloe, when we started to go through that. So we've actually now put together. It started out as a working group with a few ideas, but we expanded on those ideas in the last steering group. And I think we've got a really robust set of KPIs now that we can start using within the route map. Next year's annual report will look very different from this one. This one was really just a case of information gathering. It was if you like, it was a dump in a way. So it was an information dump, and then we've had to tease out the best way of actually delivering that information. I'm also hoping that next year we'll have a much more visual report as well. We haven't had the time or the resources, as Councillor Corinna has already said. You know, we've been very short on resources this year, but something which is far more visual, that we can actually have an easy read interpretation of that, something we can send out to schools, and it's much more interesting to read. So we've seen an example of that elsewhere, and I'm very keen that we are able to reproduce that next year if we can find the right resources to put into it. So thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Jackie. You've sort of just stolen my thunder there, because what the comment I was going to make, you know, these really are in-depth reports, and I wouldn't want to risk us making them any longer, but I did feel that we were missing out on some KPIs. But even without those, it's very clear that an awful lot of work has gone in, an awful lot of money has been raised. I think our staff need to be congratulated on the amount of funding they brought into the authority to deliver, for example, that £7 million on the Shared Prosperity Fund delivered in 25 projects, it says here. And I am aware, like my colleagues, through sitting on the working groups, that an awful lot of work is going into the LED lighting, street lighting, for example. That's happening. But I think for me, I would have liked to know how much is done and how much is left to do. So I'd look forward next year to having that sort of, you know, that document showing it on. I am sort of concerned about the risks in delivering. You've mentioned there the resource, you know, limited resources and staff available. So what is, you know, what is the key risk there, and how are we going to mitigate? And do you think, are you really confident that we're still going to make that target of 2030?
Could I bring in Daniel, because he can explain to you where we are with not my responsibility, but where we are, where we've restructured and refocused.
Yeah, please do.
Great.
Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Charlton. Yes, as you touched upon there, Chair, we have had a restructure in the team this year, which has led to a need to refocus essentially. So as Diane has mentioned, and Councillor Charlton, we are very much committed to the route map publication, which will give a clear direction for us as a team of officers on what levers we have in our capacity to pull to hit that net zero target. You know, we've still got a lot of work to do. There's contracts, for example. We're working closely with procurement, which is one of our biggest sources of emissions, and how when we procure contracts, we factor in the carbon element of those projects. And often, you know, in terms of, as an example, when you look at some of the adult services, you know, when you're procuring emergency services or something, quite often those are done on the cost benefit analysis in a very short period of time. So it's factoring that the carbon and the environmental elements of those is absolutely critical for us. And we are working very closely with colleagues across services in terms of EV transition as well. We are constantly looking for alternative sources of funding, working with WLGA, working with Welsh Government, working with UK Government. Where appropriate, we'll bring those funding cases forward to help resource where we can.
Lovely, thank you. So going back to all those things that have been achieved, you know, the key achievements have been listed there, as you say, that LED lighting, the EV vehicles, the energy efficiency, the solar installations. You know, it's a huge amount of work that has been done. So it's a little bit disappointing, isn't it, to see that the council's carbon emissions then actually went up and not down. Now I can see that the data we're using is changed, which doesn't make it easy to compare like with like. But if we were to take out the school transport data and the supply chain emissions, what would that figure look like?
We would need another officer here who is hot on our carbon accounts and who'll be able to explain that. I don't know whether Diane or Dan is able to give you those figures. They are available, but we have to comply with the Welsh Government on our carbon accounts. So whatever they ask us to measure on, that's what we have to measure on. I think there's what I would like to do, and I have asked if we can find the resource to do this, we can do it, is to have our own carbon accounts. So actually we can have a look at what we're doing and what we think is important to those carbon accounts, and then measure each one against one another. It might not tell us anything different, but I think what I would say, if we are still, our carbon emissions are still rising and we've done all of these things, it just goes to show what more we've got to do in order to start reducing our carbon emissions. And we're not losing sight of that. It may well be that our carbon emissions, because it'll start balancing itself out now with the school transport being in there now, is that we might actually be able to show some improvement this year. We always hope that that will be the case, but it might not necessarily be so. So, you know, whatever we're doing, we're making a difference, and we can see that, but it's not actually reducing the carbon emissions to where they need to be. And that's not unique to us. That's happening across the globe. So we're doing our bit, but I can see Daniel's put his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Charlton. If I just, sorry, Leader, Chairman, if I come in on that point, as you as you said, Councillor Charlton, you know, we are looking at our own accounts. So this is a Welsh Government template which we're tied to, as it were. But actually, if you look at some of our energy procurement, where that leads us in terms of our own carbon accounts, we're just trying to understand actually in terms of our EV fleet, for example, can we claim that as a saving, which we currently don't, in terms of what some of those energy savings would be. I think also, you know, we do need conversations as an authority in terms of what does not doing anything look like. You know, we've had discussions this morning already around Storm Bert, the impact of flooding. If you look at the modelling for rainfall the next 20, 40, 60 years in the hills of mid Wales, those flood events going to become more and more frequent.
Yeah.
So there's a real need for us actually to take the approach that actually we can't afford not to look at some of these decisions when procuring, if it means they're reducing our carbon footprint.
Yeah, no, understand that. It just would have been interesting, you know, to see, you know, what had been achieved without those things. But as you say, it gets a bit difficult.
I think we will, you know, in the route map there'll be options in there in terms of our aggressive aspirations to get to net zero and associated costs with that. So it's absolutely key that is evidenced for everyone in the report going forward.
Yeah. Another thing that did sort of surprise me when we were saying sort of the justification of why the carbon emissions have gone up rather than down, it says fleet and business travel growth. And I was just curious, well, what is that growth? Since when? Was that like compared to a COVID year, for example? Or
yeah, you know, this is obviously, this does record staff travelling to offices, for example. So staff are coming back into work. That is reflected in those carbon figures as well. So as you say, this is a retrospective. So interesting to see where we are with that.
I mean, it does say that there were decreases in the commuting and home working emissions, but yeah, as you say, some staff are coming back into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does kind of explain that. And the only other thing, Diane mentioned the Netherwood report, and there were 8 Netherwood priorities, weren't there, that were off track. And I just, you know, are we confident really that we're going to be able to address those, given all the comments already made about sort of resources, etc.?
Yeah, I would say all of those are actively being engaged on, and I do think now once this report is published, we'll revisit those and try and understand which ones actually are now on track. You know, we are, as I think you mentioned, the climate steering group earlier this week, last week, and we are looking in terms of carbon, in terms of what we can do as local authority, sequestration, for example, greater production of our energy production of our assets. So yeah, that should be reflected on those. So you know, we will agree to review those 8 priorities.
Lovely. Okay, well, I've got no more hands up. I mean, this was a paper really for information, but if there are any comments that members would like to make or any recommendations you'd like to make towards the paper, Or are you happy with all you've read? I think it's quite appropriate for us to congratulate officers on all the work that's gone into this and the work across the council. And as I say, I've already complimented you on the amount of funding that's been drawn into the council. We know funding from the traditional areas is getting harder and harder. So the success of the council in seeking outside funding has obviously got to be a positive move. So I think I'd like to make those comments. Councillor Pete,
Yeah,
would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I was just picking up Councillor Jackie's comments about discussing with Welsh Government about the active travel routes.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was a point we could put in around that, please.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, so, I'd like to say that I really welcome the report. I mean, not that I welcome that amount of bedtime reading, but I think it's important that we have the detail there. And I'm assured really that those KPIs will be included moving forward, because I think you kind of need to know, where you're going and moving in the right direction. And I agree, Pete, if we could add that comment about the active travel routes, because that does seem to be quite an important part, doesn't it, in our communities' health and fitness and how they'll move about their communities. Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Jackie, Diane and Daniel, for bringing us that report.
Councillor Angela, can I just check on that last comment relating to active travel? Did you want that listed as a recommendation? In which case, could the committee just show their agreement so I can note that, please?
Peter's asking that we do. Is everybody else happy to have that as a recommendation? Yeah. Lovely, thank you. And Councillor Bryan, did you have any final comment? No, you're just putting your hand up to agree. Okay, lovely. Thank you all very much. So we're going to move on to our last paper, and that's the Sustainable Resource Strategy. So we're on pages 245 to 316. And who have we got with us? Again, it's Councillor Jackie. We're working you hard, Councillor Jackie, today. We got Ashley Collins here with us as well. So welcome, Ashley. And not sure if John's finished his bit now. So Councillor Jackie and Ashley, welcome both. And I'll hand back to Councillor Jackie to introduce this paper. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll do a short introduction and then we can go into the paper as well. So the Powers Sustainable Resource Strategy for 2025 to 2030 has now been through a full engagement process, and the final strategy is here before you today. I'm pleased to bring forward this strategy. Again, this is a very exciting strategy, and a lot of work has been put into this. And I think this is one of our star strategies that will be hopefully gaining a lot of interest as we go through from other authorities as well. So this strategy is the product of extensive collaboration, including a 12-week public engagement exercise and partnership working with the Waste and Resource Action Programme, Cymru, or some of you may know it as WRAP Cymru, and local partnerships, both acting on behalf of Welsh Government as a peer review for this strategy, but also to help us build the document that you've got in front of you. And it reflects our local priorities, but also aligns with the national policy and the Welsh Government's blueprint for a circular economy. I thought I'd just explain a little bit about what this circular economy is and put it into context. And the circular economy is for recycling and waste management, and is an approach that aims to keep resources in use for as long as possible, to extract the maximum value from them while in use, and then recover and regenerate products and materials at the end of their service life. So the circular economy is an absolute fundamental to this strategy. So instead of the traditional linear model, which take, make, use and dispose, the circular economy promotes a closed loop system here. So waste is minimized by designing projects for durability, reuse and repair. Materials are reused or recycled rather than sent to landfill or for incineration, and resources are treated as valuable assets, not disposable byproducts. It also aligns with the waste hierarchy, which prioritizes prevention, followed by reuse, recycle, energy recovery, and landfill, only as the last resort. I don't think any of our waste goes to landfill, but we do send it off for energy recovery. The approach that Powys County Council's climate and nature emergency goals by introducing emissions, conserving natural resources and promoting sustainable economic practices and sustainable powers principles all fit with this particular strategy. And the strategy is built around 5 key aims, which is to reduce, reuse and repair, to prevent waste and extend the life of the products, which fits into the circular economy, recycling to meet and exceed the statutory 70% recycling target. And Ashley will be able to explain a little bit about how we're achieving that. Household waste recycling centres, and as you know, we've just put in place a new booking system, which seems to be really helping, but we also hope that as a result of that, it will increase reuse and recycling rates as well. Awareness and enforcement, which is the last resort that we want to go to, but it should improve behaviours and reduce fly tipping, which I know is a concern for many members, and infrastructure, which is there to support decarbonisation and future-proof our services. And infrastructure is really important to this report as well, because the report will enable us to go to Welsh Government and put business cases forward for new infrastructure in Powys. So Ashley Collins, who is the head of waste and recycling, will be able to provide you with the technical data you will want to interrogate. I'm sure you'll want to do that, and the financial implications of missing targets set annually by Welsh Government, and the long-term goal of zero waste by 2050, which is the Welsh Government target. But I feel that's something that all Welsh local authorities are very keen to support. So I'll finish there, Chair, and look forward to questions.
Lovely, thank you very much. So Ashley, did you want to add anything at that point, or should we go into questioning?
Excuse me, thank you, Chair. Apologies, my picture seems to be a bit weird here.
You're a bit ghostly there.
I'm not quite, well, no, I am really here, honestly. Thank you. I think Councillor Jackie's just done a very, very good overview, actually, of what the strategy is. As we keep saying, it's a sustainable resource strategy. That does get a bit confused with the sustainable Powys, of course, but we're trying not to use waste and recycling in there because it is a resource. Everything that we now deal with is a resource, particularly when we start looking at the circular economy and that kind of thing. So we will be sort of bracketing it waste and recycling just so that it doesn't confuse the sustainable Powys, but it is a resource. And as Councillor Jackie says, hardly anything ever goes to landfill now. It all does go for something, even if it's energy from waste. So we can get additional recycling out of that, and we can also recycle the bottom ash when it goes there. So that does to help towards our targets. Just to quickly mention on the targets that Councillor Jackie mentioned, there is a 70% this target, 70% target for the last financial year and each financial year going forward. We will either hit it or be very close to it for the last year. We're still finalising all the various tonnages. It's a very complicated process, but we are in discussions with Welsh Government about how we continue on that trajectory and continue to reach and exceed the target. And that is essentially what this strategy is all about, which is why we've worked very closely with Welsh Government and their partners to give them a clear direction that we are on the path to reaching and exceeding the targets and whatever target may be in the future, because it's not going to stop there with the circular economy coming much more into play. As I said, this strategy explains how we're doing this as a whole. Now, I know in the media, there's stuff in the media today that's raised the monthly collections, which is, of course, a newsworthy item. If it ever was, it was 4 weekly, not monthly, but that is just a small element of this whole strategy. This is looking at the bigger picture. It's looking at the infrastructure, the facilities we need to be able to process all that material, how we improve recycling at household recycling centres, how we improve our awareness, which is a big thing to get people to recycle, because has been in the press today that if everybody recycled at the curbside, there would be no need to go down the other alternatives of reducing residual collection, which is a very effective way of getting to people to recycle. But if people are recycling, and most people are, we would not need to go down that route. So that's where the awareness, and it really is awareness and enforcement. It's awareness. We want people to do this of their own free will, and there's no reason they shouldn't. And we will need to be making sure we communicate that message to them. So just a quick in terms of the figures, for every percentage point below 70%, there would be approximately £100,000 fine to the authority. Now, clearly we're in discussions with Welsh Government because they want to work with us rather than fine authorities. So that, again, is part of what this strategy is about, to show that we're committed to achieving their aims and working very closely with them to do so. So hopefully that's given a bit of an overview to add on to what Councillor Jackie said. Sorry, I probably should mention the engagement because that's why it's come back.
Yes.
We did a 12-week engagement process on it. We've a message gone out to all members. I've met with the members at like days at the depots. We've done some engagement with Community Council when we've been asked. It's been very well publicised on social media, the normal media and all that kind of things. It's not a bad response to it, you know, we would have liked more. I think most people would with any sort of engagement exercise that we've gone to. But what it does, you know, it wasn't purely on certain aspects of it. It was about the whole strategy once again. So if we're going to do anything from that, we would then need to be engaging again with our residents to implement anything. So what we've done here is updated the strategy with a summary of the comments received back. So under each section, there's now a part that says these were what we got back from the public. And then if we go on to implement some of this stuff, that is what we will take into account when we do that. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm going to open up to questions, but I'm going to ask you the first one, Ashley, as you've just mentioned the 12-week engagement. From the responses you got, did you learn anything new, or did members of the public highlight something that you hadn't previously considered?
I mean, I think, you know, a lot of us have worked in waste and recycling for a long time now, so we're aware of the kind of things that would come back. What was quite encouraging is the amount of support for it, really.
Yeah.
That people are very much behind it. But what we also was like, what are the barriers as well? And people come up with things about not having time to recycle, not having enough information. So from things like that, we can look at our comms again. We do a huge amount of comms. You can never do enough, but it's making sure that message is absolutely crystal clear. And sometimes as waste professionals, we know what, I don't know, a plastic composite cup might be, but that doesn't mean a lot to the public. So we need to make sure we get that message out there. For example, that's a good example there, that the coffee cups that we're now able to recycle, people think they would go into the paper box because that's what they look like, when actually not at all, because they've you know, they've got plastic composite lining on them, so they need to go in with the plastic in cans, because then we can then take them off the conveyor belt when we recycle them. So that is one of the big things that came to me, is just getting that message out absolutely crystal clear. There were always some people who are more difficult to get to in terms of encouraging them to recycling, and that's where we need to focus. But we've got to get our message straight, which I think for the most part it is, but it has showed a few areas where we can improve, I think, on that basis.
Yeah, I suppose you make a good point there, Ashley, but in terms of the people putting their recycling in the wrong bin, those are the people who genuinely want to recycle and are actively doing it. So I can see that that's an educational sort of thing of making it clear what things are made of. But what about the people who don't really recycle? And as you know, I've been with my town council to look around the refuse and recycling depot in Raider, and we were amazed at the products that are in the residual waste that should be recycled, really. So what steps and actions can the council realistically do, short of going round to everybody's house and recycling for them?
Well, that is the big challenge that we face, and that was where we're looking at awareness initially, awareness and education. And we have a small awareness team, which we're looking to develop so that we can spend more time getting that message out to people, spending time knocking on doors if necessary. We have done some work in the county of putting stickers on bins saying no food waste, please use the food waste collection systems. So there's a lot to do with that. And then it's where we go from there. We have to get as many people on board as we possibly can, and then it's looking at best practice from other authorities. There has been enforcement campaigns and other authorities that have been very effective, and more just the act of doing it rather than going through the enforcement process is usually very effective. So there's very few actual enforcement actions been taken by other authorities, but the fact that they're looking at that, and there's a lot of support for that as well, because so many people are recycling now, they're like, well, why can't other people? So it's also getting good practice, and it's keeping up with the Joneses is a phrase that's used quite a lot, and there are actually campaigns nationally about that. But again, it's working with Welsh Government. They've got their Be Mighty campaign, which gets on television and reaches a far wider audience than us. And there are the hard to reach ones, which we're going to have to really focus on in the particular areas where that is.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Councillor Jackie, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come back in there before I invite questions from the committee?
Yeah, I think, and coming back on what do we learn from the engagement, and I think, you know, Ashley is absolutely right. What we learned from the engagement, there's a lot of people out there who are really keen to recycle. They want us to set up more reuse and repair sites, which is something that this strategy does cover. And I'm hoping that now we've got the new contracts for the household recycling sites, using the contractor that we have, who is also very keen to do that and is also committed to doing that. And we know that they've already started work on that and looking out to the third sector to see what we can do to support the third sector to help us, so that there is a collaboration going on there. But I think the other thing that the strategy and the document, it's on page 264 of these papers, which is the black bin, which shows you the different colours on what we're recycling and what we're not. Yeah. And that's very, very clear. 55% of what goes into that black bin that people are doing is not actually supposed to go in there. But the biggest one is the 20% food waste. And if that's that one area that we can, as we go forward, really, really reduce over the next 12 months and further, then that will help us. I think just that one thing alone will help us, I'm sure, get to that 70% target, because we're really, really close. But Ashley won't tell me what it is yet. He I keep asking him, and he keeps saying, I can't tell you, I can't tell you yet, can't tell you. But the other thing as well that comes out quite a lot, and I think we need to find ways of supporting this, is it's not a massive amount, but it is something which does come out in the media, and I get emails about it as well, which is nappies, disposable nappies, and incontinence waste as well. And if anybody has got any of those problems, then tell them to come to speak to us, because we can help, we can find ways around that and to support them. And I think the other area that we want to develop within this strategy now, one of the first priorities is to support those people to raise awareness where we've got flats and communal bins, because that's a big area where we know that it is tough for people to recycle. It's not easy for them to have their bins, and if we can help them, then again, I think that's going a long way to supporting people who, as you say, Chair, who don't actually recycle. But it may well be not because they don't want to recycle, it's just that the facilities that they have make it very difficult for them. So I'll shut up there, but those are sort of things that we did pull out from the engagement.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, members, so Councillor Peat, first question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to others for the reports and presentations there. Just picking up on the theme of engagement, I think there's ongoing engagement here, because people really want to do this, people are keen to do this, and I think the best way that we can keep that ongoing engagement going is by actually collecting their waste on a weekly basis on time. That's the best way of keeping them on side. Unfortunately, I'm sure Ashley's probably aware, we're on a slightly bad run in the last 2 or 3 weeks in my ward, where we've had missed collections due to vehicle breakdowns, lorry being full and running out of time, a vehicle being in for its 6 weekly inspection in late starting. So I guess my question is, what can we do to make sure these vehicle issues really don't arise, and that we do engage with the residents by collecting their waste on time as promised? Thanks, Chair.
Happy to come back on that.
Yes.
Yeah, please do, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, just to clarify what Councillor Jackie was saying about me not telling her what the recycling target is, that's because I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because it's not confirmed. I can certainly give a good estimate, which is very close to 70%, but it has to go through a very complicated verification process. And I wouldn't want to put out a figure and then have it contradicted by NRW because they tell me that 3 tons of wood have gone somewhere different to where we thought it had. And it really is that critical. So just to clarify, that's why. I'm certainly not keeping any secrets. Thank you, Councillor Pete. I was expecting you to raise this because I've seen like the email exchange this morning about that. We are having a few vehicle problems at the moment, and we haven't actually solved entirely the staffing issue in the north as well. It does seem to be more of a problem in the north. Hanging on to drivers and getting them into actually, in the first place, and then getting them to stay, because it's not like any other driving job that they just take something from here to here and sit while their vehicle's loaded or unloaded. They have to get out and collect the bins as well. So it is quite a different job. So it's hard to get people in. That's one issue. The other is, as you correctly said, the vehicles, which it's a bit of a fine line, really, because we want to operate the most efficient service that we can, and having spare vehicles sat in yards is very, very expensive. We try and hire them in where they are when we can, but again, hiring a vehicle that isn't used is a big cost to the council. The problem with that is that if you have only a limited number of spares, if one goes off the road and then another one's involved in an accident, which is what has been happening, and yes, they do have to go in for their 6 weekly checks to make sure that they're safe to be on the road. It doesn't give us much resilience at all. But what we are looking at the moment is getting some additional vehicles in, possibly even electric ones we're looking at the moment. And also we are looking at getting some second-hand ones to tide us over, which should help enormously, because it's not just in the north. We've had a few issues in the mid as well in terms of getting the collections done. We try and cover with other vehicles where we can, but then we have capacity issues. For example, with plastic, it's compacted in the Rome equipped vehicles, where if we try and pick it up on a cage vehicle, it isn't. So we struggle to pick it up from that point of view. If you miss collections 1 week, then you have to catch up the next. And I completely agree with you. That's one of the essential parts. We have to provide a good service. Otherwise, we will lose the trust of people, which we don't want to do. Some areas do get affected more than others because of the particular vehicles that are used on those rounds. So we're certainly not picking on your area, Councillor Pete, but because of the type of vehicles we use, it's not like we could collect from you and Stan Newtown, for example, because it's a different way of collecting. So we do have plans in place to increase the number of temporary vehicles, but also longer term. And longer term, we're also looking at, well, we are conducting a route optimization exercise, which is taking a very long time because of the processes we have to go through with route risk assessments and all that kind of thing. But that is to solve some of these issues. So we do thank you for councillors and residents for their patience. Quite often we end up collecting the following day, which is what we try to do. And there's some very, very good staff in the north that I'm sure you're aware of. We've had staff out in the evenings trying to catch up because they get really affected by it themselves, because they totally understand that that's what, people, expect to have a regular collection, and they try to catch up whenever they can. So we are trying to sort that out, and there is a plan for the longer term on it.
Okay, Pete. Yep. Okay, Councillor Corinna.
Oh, thanks. Just as Ashley's just mentioned, you might get another electric dust cart. Are you going to get a grant for that? That's my first question. But second question, well, I was pleased to note that Wales is apparently the second in the world in terms of recycling, second to Austria, and England is number 11. Is there any tension there, as I live on the border, or any willingness to learn from England?
Okay. No, good question. In terms of grants for electric vehicles, we're actually looking at electric recycling vehicles as opposed to dust car. It always makes me laugh. It's a bit of an oxymoron, an electric dust car, isn't it? Because they were called dust carts when we used to collect ash from fires. But I still, ash cart still gets used as well. But yeah, we have one electric residual vehicle, and we're looking at the possibility of electric recycling vehicles, so the source separated ones. In terms of grant, well, we're in discussions with Welsh Government. I've got a meeting this week talking to them about the potential for that. So I don't know as yet, but what they have done in the past and what they did with the electric residual vehicle was paid the additional costs, because they do cost about twice as much, but you do get that back over time because of the savings. But yes, we are looking at trying to get some additional money in for that. In terms of being in second in the world, yes, that is pretty impressive. For Wales to be that, and England are way behind. I mean, is there tension? Well, I think when I speak to my colleagues, I think there's jealousy, really, because they look over the border and think, well, how are you doing it there? And, you know, I speak from experience. I've been in Paris 17 years now, but I did work for Worcestershire and Herefordshire prior to that. And I quite often speak to colleagues over the border, and they're just like, well, how are you doing it? And I've actually gone, well, you know, done talks to their cabinets to say what we're doing in Wales that's different. But the biggest difference is the way it all works together in Wales. I mean, it's much smaller, so it's a lot easier, but the Welsh Government are very much leading on this. And there's a very close working relationship, which has gone on for many years, as well as additional funding to help Wales get to that level. But you know, for example, I was at a conference yesterday in Cardiff, and there was a speaker from London who was coming to talk about flats. And the first thing she said was, well, I don't know what I can teach you in Wales. Now, clearly they can, because it's, you know, they have a lot more flats than we do, and we will learn a lot from it. But yeah, I don't think, you know, it's I wouldn't say there was tension, but there was you know, we all work together as waste managers. But I think they're certainly like, wow, look at what's going on in Wales. And there's a lot of legislation going on in England, like with the simpler recycling, and they're basically, you know, making local authorities start to collect food. So if you're in the market for making food caddies in England, you're doing very well at the moment, because an awful lot of authorities trying to get hold of these things and implement it. But there's a lot going on in England to try and bring it up to the place that Wales in, but they're a long way off. I mean, their targets, they're looking at like targets of 2035 to get to 50%, which is completely different to where we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, my daughter lives over the border in foreign lands, and they just don't recycle. Yeah, it's amazing. I can't, when I go there, I'm putting things in pots, and she just goes and tips them all in the same bin. No, we don't do that here. They're hopeless, you know. So yeah, it's amazing, really. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you. And really good to see this as well. Obviously, something I'm excited about. But my question really is quite a specific point. But I was just wondering if you've interrogated why the conversion rate for visits to the site for the engagement was so low. You had, I think it was 1,600 visits for the survey, but only 11% actually completed the survey. That's quite a lot of people who got to the page. Just wondering if there was any ideas as to why maybe they didn't follow through and fill it in, or if that's normal. I don't know. It seems like quite a lot of people coming in and interested in engaging, but they're not taking up the opportunity when they get there.
We've had a lot of consultations lately. I can't quite remember, but did we have to register for this one to fill it in? Because I know in other consultations you have to register with a site to be able to fill it in, and I know from talking to my residents, they're not interested. They just, if they've got to register, they're not filling it in. But I don't quite remember, was that the case with this one? Councillor Jackie, you got your hand up.
I think actually what Councillor is saying is a recurring theme about and all the papers that I've brought forward through. You know, we've tried to engage.
Yeah.
There's only so much resource that you can put into it. We have your say is our preferred engagement process online. And as a county as big as Powys, I think, you know, we've got to do that at the moment. But we did go out to if you have a look, we had an engagement strategy that we put together when we brought this to the paper last time. I haven't got it in front of me, but we didn't just rely on have your say. We actually went out to members. We can only get members in if they want to come in and talk to us. But I think that certainly the member development day that I went on in Brecon, the room was packed. We were nearly all there. But I don't think that was the case in some of the other depots. But I think, you know, engagement is one of those funny things. Unless you want to put in a huge amount of investment and go out to as many people as you possibly can face to face, which is by far the best way of doing any engagement, you're going to have to rely on what is it's not a perfect science. But I think we were really quite pleased with the amount of engagement that we did with our staff as well as with councillors, and finding different ways of talking to people. So I think this is probably as good as you're going to get with the process that we have in place at the moment. But as Ashley said earlier as well, any changes that we put in through this strategy, we will go out to engagement. We will learn from this. And I think, we can be far more targeted as well when we know what we're doing if it's one particular issue rather than a whole strategy.
Thanks, Jackie. Just to clarify a bit, maybe I didn't, because I think the engagement, you did quite well to get that many people to come to the site. I think the actual engagement resource that was put in from the council was really good. What I wonder is whether there's a barrier that's stopping people from following through. Like, you've got a lot of people have gone to the site, and maybe we need something that hooks them in. When we do something that happens, if you're in business, you see where people are dropping off your website. How can you keep them on there for longer? And so what is it that's turned them off when they've got there? It's not made them convert into a full completed survey.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's why I started out by saying this question has come up in so many places now, certainly with papers that I've put forward, but I know it's come up elsewhere that the level of engagement is very low when it's on Have Your Say, and that drop off has been recognised. I can't answer that question. It's not my area anyway, but I know that it has been. But sorry, you shifted on my screen and I suddenly lost you, Chloe. It's very disconcerting when somebody disappears. But I think this is something that I think we have a portfolio holder who is responsible for that. We have officers who are responsible for that, and I think that's probably a question better put to them than for me to be able to respond to.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. Councillor Liz.
Thank you. Congratulations, Jackie and Ashley. Because this is one of the big celebrations, really. I know we've had scrutiny this morning, but really all 4 of the papers we've had, they've had lots of positives in. In terms of the questionnaire, I was just pleased to see that somebody had mentioned about speaking Welsh. In our recycling centres, and I wondered if that is something that you'll take forward and promote. And then I've got a sort of more broader question, which is about the booking system. And as you know, I was one of the people that was challenging that and asking a lot of questions. I just wanted to tell you that the feedback I've had about that has been extremely positive. From everyone. I've not actually had anyone that said this has been a nuisance. And, I've had people bending my ear when I've been swimming in the morning about this, but they've come back and said this is working really, really well. So what I wondered, and this is actually, I'm asking this question now, in the light of the fact that we have got a motion coming to council tomorrow. I just wondered, I'm assuming that you have an evaluation process for new things that you introduce, and that you would be intending to review the success of that.
Yeah, it was
And
always
that's
our
already on
intention.
your agenda to do that.
Yeah, but it was always our intention, because of the flack that we took before we put the process in place. We said we have to do an evaluation after 6 months. We had to let the system embed. Doing it straight away it would not have been appropriate, as we were being asked to do and still being asked to do. But it is there. Ashley's going to come back in because he'll be able to tell you how we're putting that information together. What we do know, and we knew this before we started, that having a booking system would enable us to gather a huge amount of data. We've never been able to gather that data before because people just come and go, and we had no way of measuring what was coming in, how many people were coming in, what time they were spending in there, where they were coming from. So all of those were unknowns to us, and we needed to gather that. Yeah, so we really needed to gather that. But from my understanding, we've got an officer who is really, really onto this and picking out all kinds of state data that he's beginning to drag out from just the booking system. And it's had its teething problems, and I understand there's a bit of a teething problem with the Brecon site today. Or somebody in Brecon who couldn't use the app this morning. So, but we pick it up very, very quickly. So when there is a problem, we do pick it up really quickly. And what it also means is that when the sites start to get full,
we stopped taking bookings. So people aren't taking, you know, driving somewhere and then find they can't get in.
Queuing up and waiting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's because the bins are full as well. So thank you for asking the question.
Yeah,
I don't know
I've got one more question.
Oh, right.
One more
Okay.
question. Yeah, and it just relates to, you know, obviously the success of recycling. And we all get, members of the public come to us about various issues that they see, you know, with contaminated bins. The big issue I have in my ward with contaminated bins is in multi-use flats. So, you know, where you've got a big bin store, people are going in, they're just throwing their stuff in. And I'm just wondering, you know, if at some point it would be appropriate to have a focus on those people who live in those kind of complexes to see what we can do to improve their approach to recycling. And you know, in fairness to Ashley and the team, I know that, you know, they do, you know, if I get in touch, they do kind of go down and get in touch with you know, the landlord and try and work together to secure an improvement. But it's just that I think that would be something that would be helpful. But thank you. That's all from me. But
yeah, thank you, Liz. Yeah, thank you. Now I'm very conscious of time, so I want us to be rounding up now as quickly as possible. I can see Pete's got his hand up again, Councillor Pete, and Ashley's got his hand up. Do you want to come in at the end, Ashley, to just a final roundup, or do you want to come in now?
If I could just quickly come in, otherwise I have a huge, great list that I have to answer, and it's quite hard to remember what was actually asked. So if I may just quickly cover those points. Thank you, Councillor Liz, for those positive feedback about the booking system at HRCs. That is overwhelmingly what we've had back. And it's really encouraging that the public have come back like that. And, you know, it was something that people were very concerned about. We had an awful lot of negative publicity, which I think we've, you know, it's surprised me how well it's gone since, I must admit. And it was really nice that someone actually came back to Councillor Jackie and said, you know, I sent quite a you know, a negative email not so long ago, but I admit I was wrong. And fair play to that person for coming back to do that, because not many would. So that's really encouraging.
I've had a couple actually, Ashley, that contacted me from my ward who were very naysayers. And have come back to say,
Okay. In terms of the review, well, it was always the intention to do that. So a lot has been made about that. Yes, we'll do a 6-monthly review. We're reviewing it constantly. We have data coming out of our ears for this now. We can tell you exactly when people are going, which are the busiest slots. We've already reacted on site and increased the number of slots at certain times. We've also extended the opening hours where we can at the weekends on the site to accommodate that. So we had a few teething troubles at the start, but we can very quickly adapt to that kind of thing. So it's really, really useful. And the amount of data that we've got on all these things is just huge. So we need to let it bed in. There's no point in doing it now. We need to actually look at that data as a whole. So after 6 months, we're more than happy to do a review on the whole system.
I'm going to stop you there, Ashley, because I think that will be discussed tomorrow, as Chloe highlighted. Oh, no, Liz, sorry. There is a motion on that tomorrow, and I think you've clarified that for us now. But I am watching that ticking clock and knowing that officers have to leave us. Pete, Brian, have you got a new point to bring in there, and can you do it very, very succinctly if you have?
Yeah, I'll try my best. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it just brings me back to my phrase today about having a balanced view. So I think the flip side to both Councillor Liz's good news and Ashley's good news is I've seen some surveys where over 90% of people don't think this will improve recycling rates. They oppose the charges for DIY waste. They think it'll be more fly tipping, more bonfires. And I think there's almost 5,000 residents that have now signed the petition by Councillor Joy Jones opposing the booking system. So I don't want to preempt tomorrow's debate, but again, I do think we just need to keep a balanced view on this. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Councillor Brian.
I was just going to ask Ashley, for the street cleansing bins, have we a programme to replace them with the new recycled type, not just a single one?
It's not well, we have a number of new bins that we've had funding for. We're not looking at replacing every single bin. We're looking at as needs arise and where they would be most appropriate. They are still quite hard to get the recycling out of that because not everyone does use them as they should. So it is quite problematic, but we get what we can out. But there's not a programme to replace all the bins with the new ones, no. But we are looking at each request we have. And we do have a litter bin policy as well that we will refer to in terms of where they're needed and where they're of best use. I mean, litter bins are often seen as a solution to so many problems, but they often actually attract more waste and litter than they do if they're not there. So we need to evaluate where each one is located, but where we can, we will replace them with the better bins, but particularly as bins reach the end of their life as well.
Okay, I will just add, I was one very critical of your new policy, but I've had nothing but compliments. Thanks.
There we are.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much, members. As I say, that clock is ticking, and thank you for the points. So the points I would like to make, because this strategy really is for noting, but of course we can make some comments and some recommendations. And really, I think I want to thank all the officers involved, because it's clear that there's been a huge amount of work over a long period of time going into this. And overall, I think we have a quite a positive response to the strategy, taking in point Councillor Pete Lewington's comments there of an alternative view. So I think that it is really, really important that we do that 6-month review, and it's absolutely essential that we ensure that any changes or adaptations that are made are evidence-based, that we have that evidence, and I'm sure the numbers and the responses you're having can feed into that evidence. The new bins there that Councillor Bryan just mentioned, I think that is a very good point, and I think that's something worth looking at again. And I recognise that you say that it's on a funding basis, but I think largely they're welcomed round towns when they're introduced. So just making that point there. So members, have you got any other additional comment or recommendation that you'd like to make? Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to echo your comments as well there, and your thanks for the officers. And I'd also like to thank Ashley for his very thorough and comprehensive replies to not only my question, but as well as his understanding of all the issues. So many thanks for that.
Absolutely.
The only thing I was wondering if we could perhaps add in was around our conversation around the vehicles, whether there's something about reviewing the fleet management strategy, something along those lines.
I think that would be fair enough, given the delays, etc., that there have been. So yeah, we'd happily do that. So everybody happy with those as comments and recommendations? So those recommendations that we have evidence-based review of the changes at the household recycling, the booking system and the charges, and that we have some work undertaken to look at the fleet and how we deliver that to try and minimise those delays and cancellations of pickups in the future, and then all our positive comments. Are you happy with that, Gemma?
Hi, Chair. Yeah, that's fine. I'll note those as observations for you.
Fantastic. So thank you all. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you to all the officers for coming to join us today. The final item on our work programme is the forward work programme. You can see we've got some populated items in there for September and October. Hopefully that'll stay as it is. Officers are aware they need to bring those papers if they're ready. So here we are, 3 minutes ahead of time. So if nobody's got any further comments, I'm going to close the formal part of this meeting now and ask members, if they're able, just to stay on for 5 minutes reflection after the meeting. And once again, I just really want to reiterate my thanks to all the officers. It is clear an awful lot of work is going into this, and we recognise the challenge for you all in the financial sort of situation we find ourselves in. And those papers were huge. Thank you very much. Don't do it again. No, I'm clearly joking. We need the information, but yes, there's a lot of work. So I want to thank members of the committee as well, because really you have had your minds stretched. I mean, it's been quite a job, hasn't it, taking it all in. Yeah, so thank you very much, and end of meeting.